Welcome to the Rimworld mod rundown. We'll be taking a quick look at what you can expect to see from Alpha Armoury. For starters, you'll need the Odyssey DLC as well as the additional workshop content, vanilla expanded framework, and harmony. If you've seen my coverage around Odyssey, you'll know that one of my favourite features added for vanilla combat was the unique weapons and their array of potential modifications. Alpha Armoury expands and enhances this by including one more unique weapon, around 100 extra traits to play with, and brand new items known as tweaking kits, which work differently to the ones commonly sold in the state of Arizona. There's also a handful of options to tailor the mod to your own preferences, so we'll go over those first. You've got sliders that allow you to increase both the minimum and maximum traits that a weapon is going to roll with, up to 10. You can have unique weapon pods sent to your colony every quadrum, especially interesting for something like a restricted run in which you only use the unique weapons that arrive via this method. You can also increase the amount of ancients armed with unique weapons, as well as making them hold additional weapon kits in their pockets to further upgrade your own weapons down the line. Or you have the all-out option of allowing unique weapons to spawn on any raider, leading to utter chaos when their numbers start to get into double digits. Finally, there's the option to make unique weapons more common on the quest reward loot table, leading to increased opportunities to earn them. This setting is enabled by default, so you should notice after installing Alpha Armoury that unique weapons become more accessible to all of your colonies. Before we dig into all of the unique traits, because that's the meat of the mod, let's quickly go over what weapon kits are. You have 4 new types of kit to play with here. Starting with the conversion kit, this is capable of turning the type of weapon listed into a unique weapon, as well as granting it its first trait. The weapon quality carries over too, so if you turn an awful rifle into a unique rifle, it won't suddenly become masterwork or legendary. It's going to be a garbage rifle with a trait. So you want to save these for high quality gear that will benefit from it the most. Then you have tweaking kits. These add the named trait to a weapon of your choice, providing that it's applicable. Just like with vanilla weapon traits, you aren't going to be slapping broadhead arrow ammunition into an assault rifle. You'll be able to see what weapons can make use of that named trait in the information panel on the tweaking kit itself. As well as being able to add traits, you also have the option to yank them out. The removing kit will get rid of a single random trait on a weapon that it's applied to. It's useful if you have a really solid base for your unique weapon, like a legendary charge rifle, but the initial trait that rolled on it isn't what you want. It allows you to free up that slot and apply better modifications to it with more tweaking kits. If you want to go nuclear on a unique weapon, the last option has you covered. The Tabula Rasa weapon kit will remove all traits on the selected weapon, essentially allowing you to start from fresh. It could be overkill in most cases, but it's really useful if you have a legendary unique weapon and multiple trait kits that you would rather put together yourself, saving you needing to spend numerous removal kits on one weapon. So those are your kits, but you also have an additional launcher with Alpha Armoury. By default, it behaves like a smoke grenade launcher. So if a trait doesn't add any damage to its profile, it's non-lethal. Just like an EMP or a smoke launcher in vanilla, if you equip these on your hunter, it lets them train their shooting skill pretty much indefinitely, because they'll never kill their target. It's just going to be noisy as hell for a few days. So, all of these new traits. I'll have the exact details open on screen when talking about them so you can see for yourself how it's interacting. But rather than getting super bogged down with the numbers here, we're going to go through all of them at a pretty rapid pace. Many thanks to Sarg for listing all of these changes in a Google document so I didn't have to drive myself insane trying to pull all of this information from the game itself. The link to that Google Doc is on the workshop page for the mod if you'd like to dig through it yourself. A final point to mention is that all of these traits come with unique appearances, and there's even a button in the dev menu to spawn every single unique weapon possible, which, yeah, it's a lot. This is going to keep the visuals around your colony very diverse if you make good use of unique weapons, which for some might be great. If you prefer a more uniform look to your group, you're a little out of luck here, as there's no weapon kit to pick out a specific cosmetic appearance currently. Let's start by going through some new ammunition types then. Flechettes increase armor penetration, and whilst it does replace the weapon projectiles with arrows, it won't override restrictions around using something like lightweight arrows on it too. They're still reserved for bows. Mini rockets applies AoE splash to the weapon damage profile. As you'd expect, the more dakka a weapon packs, the more potential the trait can offer. It turns something like a minigun into a phenomenal crowd control device, as even missed shots will still hit something. A sonic amplifier will convert sharp damage into blunt, making it exceptionally more difficult to mitigate with armor. Just be aware that this will stop the weapon inflicting bleeding wounds, so the only option to bring someone down in the majority of cases is to surpass their pain threshold or destroy something important. You can't land a couple of good hits and then ring a roses to wait for them to collapse. Cryo rounds give you a weapon that Mr. Freeze would be proud of, converting the damage into frostbite. To the best of my knowledge, it's heat armor that works against mitigation for damage of this type. Sadly, it's one of the easiest things to stack with even a modicum of gear, so these are best used to drop tribals and the like, as frostbite wounds are significantly more painful than a standard cut or bruise of equal value. The corrosive burst is pretty useful on the launcher, as acid damage is incredibly hard to mitigate. It gives you a viable option against high-tech factions or those that make use of war suits or war caskets. For something very unique, you're going to need Vanilla Plants Expanded installed. The fertilizer canister will turn the grenade launcher into a very loud, extremely dangerous plow, turning the soil that it hits into a tilled version, which ups the fertility. This trait does make the weapon do a tiny amount of blunt damage, so if you set an animal to be hunted with the retaliation chance in hope of tilling your entire map, just be aware that they might turn on the hunter. If you want something a little weirder, you have the potato cannon. This can plant seeds to save your gardeners some time. Is it ridiculous? Absolutely. Does it work? Well, yeah. Again, extremely limited blunt damage, but it can be used to scattershot food around your map if you have a hunter use it. Just be aware that because this and fertilizer are both an ammo type, they can't be paired together on the same weapon. You can have one of each and use them in tandem though, and pretend that you're watching Clarkson's farm. You have 3 standard launcher kits too, for incendiary, EMP, and if you're playing with biotech, toxic. A small point of clarification with these ammo types is that they are specific to the launcher, and they override the smoke shot. However, pretty much all weapons can have a launcher equipped as well, meaning it's possible to have something like an incendiary launcher that also has an underbarrel EMP. That also means if you want to keep your launcher non-lethal, you need to find the underbarrel option to attach rather than using an ammo kit. For something very familiar, although perhaps a little unexpected in terms of a launcher modification, you have a flamethrower kit. This uses a wide forward burst of fire, as you can see from the scorch marks that it leaves on the floor, so it's got better crowd control potential than something like an Imp's Flame Breath or the Hellcat Rifle's Bioferrite Bath. Moving away from the launcher, now we've got the laser capacitor projectiles. These will convert standard bullets into a combined sharp incendiary shot. Whilst the projectiles do draw a line to their target, they don't work like a Gauss weapon, so you aren't going to be ripping through entire waves of enemies with a single shot. For that kind of damage, you want a coil lance conversion. These turn any sniper rifle into something devastating for enemies and friendly fire, as now you need to seriously consider firing lines and any collateral damage. Gauss weapons are undeniably very fun to futz about with though. If you're one of the very few people that actually makes use of beam repeaters, now you'll have an option to turn them into a cryo cannon. This shoots a ray of frost, extremely similar to the ability from Psycast Expanded, with slightly less damage. Given that Ray of Frost was one of the strongest low-level Psycasts when used correctly, it can make this weapon exceptionally potent to hold down corners or tight angles. If you prefer hot to cold, you can turn the beam repeater into a plasma cannon instead. This operates essentially the same as a cryo cannon, it just uses a pallet swap to give you a little more variation to play with. For those of you who remember playing the original Unreal tournament,
Godlike.
you can turn a sniper rifle into the Ripper with the Chakram launcher kit. This notches up the armor penetration on a weapon already designed to punch through high values. It appears that the wibbly wobbly shots can only hit one target though, they don't shred through everything in their path. Thermal blast ammunition is really unique. It applies heatstroke buildup with every shot, doing a minimal amount of sharp damage and hitting with a very small splash. Whilst it does pack potential in terms of downing targets rather than outright killing them, the buildup isn't so rapid that a single weapon can handle an entire raid or even a single target for you. You'd need at least 2 or 3 of these on a rapid fire weapon to apply enough to bring down a meaningful amount of targets. Of course, it's useless against enemies that are immune to heatstroke, like mechanoids. If you want pure chaos, you need a vanometric 3D printer. This makes every single shot totally random. It could be great, it could be disastrous. If you want to leave things up to the gods of RNG, this is the weapon mod for you. Needle projectiles apply paralysis buildup across multiple shots. The more that land, the better. The paralysis will lower consciousness of the target, but you'll need a pretty tanky enemy for it to build up to a meaningful amount before they die from the wounds that it takes to apply it. These work best for big game hunting. The Tesla coil upgrade makes charged weapons exceptionally powerful against both mechanoids and humanoids for different reasons. It can chain stun through any targets vulnerable to EMP damage, allowing you to hold down mechanoid raids without needing a designated EMP grenadier. For humans, the chain effect causes burns, leading to panic and disrupting formations. It's just pretty damn strong all around. If you're playing with Anomaly, nerve spiker bolts can now appear as an ammo type and can be attached to any single shot weapon, especially powerful on close range weapons with a faster firing cycle like a revolver, as it allows a single shooter to stun multiple enemies at once by target swapping. The Thumper upgrade is something that only works on the chain shotgun, turning it into a portable version of the thump cannon that's used by termites. This does pretty naff damage against enemies and the like, but it makes for an exceptional breach weapon if you're busting down ancient complex walls or raiding into an enemy base. A net gun is going to turn the grenade launcher into a melee raider's worst nightmare. It's able to bind targets and stop their advance. The upgrade also comes with a bonus that removes the forced miss radius. It's very powerful for chasing down a fleeing target and especially useful for a large animal enemy that needs to get close to your team to pose any real threat. Another weapon that requires DLC here. If you're playing with biotech, you'll get the Syringer. Mainly for the memes and stupidity, this supplies harmful genes on successful shots. The larger your gene library in-game, the more ridiculous this can get. Are you ever going to use this if you actually want a prisoner? No. But it's hilarious to see enemies suddenly become reliant on go juice, delicate and then terrible at cooking. Shatter rounds give you an AoE burst around the target that you're aiming for. This can actually be dangerous for yourself if you use it in an especially tight corridor, so it's advisable to put this on a firearm with a high maximum distance if possible. Firing this over a friendly shoulder to hit the enemy a couple of tiles away might just ruin your own front line. Electrified weapons will summon a strike of lightning to hit the target if the shot lands successfully, and whilst, yeah, it's ridiculous, it's surprisingly effective, with both the AoE damage and incendiary capability. Tachyonic feed weapons are so specific in their use case. Their damage is increased against a moving target, so they aren't performing at their best in a kill box or a door hold scenario. However, for taking down a runner or attacking a charging enemy, they're fantastic. This is another one of those weapons that benefits against things like huge, fast moving animals. If you have someone else play bait against a thrumbo whilst your sharpshooter uses a tachyonic rifle, they're going to get a huge damage bonus thanks to its high move speed. Another weapon for biotech users now, Hemovoric guns behave completely normally in the hands of someone that isn't a sanguiphage. If the user is a blood drinker, each shot is going to drain the target's hemogen and restore it to the wielder, allowing for more in-combat use of things like piercing spines, coagulates or jumps. This effect does appear to require the target to be something that could normally be targeted with a blood feed, however. More DLC guns, this time royalty. Psychic weapons work like Hemovorics did, only this time they're going to be sapping psi focus for the wielder instead. In the hands of someone that isn't a psi caster, it's a normal gun, but your caster will benefit greatly from it. The target of the attack doesn't need to have a psi capability either, it just saps raw life force to fuel their effect. Bullet splitting weapons duplicate their projectiles, with the damage being split across the two shots, serving a couple of purposes. Firstly, it avoids limbs and organs being utterly annihilated by a single strong bullet, so your prisoner potential will be raised. It also doubles the bleed applied if both shots land unmitigated, again leading to increased prisoners as the target will drop faster from blood loss. These make really great weapons for trying to grab strong recruits. The healing gun is what it feels like your teammates are using in any competitive shooter, as its projectiles actually heal the target instead of hurting them. You need a pretty specific setup and placement for a colonist to make good use of this weapon, as you want it to scatter the payload across your defensive line without potentially missing and splashing any enemies. Of course, you could just treat it like American healthcare and keep it in the hospital, then shoot the place up after each combat to speed up people's recovery process. Life-stealing weapons are the offensive version of this healing gun, transferring life force back to the wielder as they deal damage. If you can get this on someone that already has tanky genetics, traits, or some kind of accelerated healing, it makes for an exceptionally strong defender that's just a nightmare to bring down. Chemburster weapons might be one of my favourites. They turn the target into a Boomerlope proxy that will explode upon death. Again, you are not going to be getting a lot of prisoners if you make use of these guns, but it makes defences significantly easier, as landing a few shots across a group of enemies turns them all into a huge chain explosion. Flux charged weapons are another AoE choice. Bullets from these guns destabilise the primary target and cause them to discharge against secondary targets, which sounds significantly worse if you're playing with RJW.
Splatter spree.
Just remember to let the effect drop off the primary target before you run in to try and grab any loot or take prisoners. You also don't want to let the primary target of these attacks make it to your melee line. Voltaic weapons are especially vicious, causing paralysis and heart attacks when they land their shots. They still do normal damage too, and just like the needles, it's something that's only going to stack up to a meaningful amount against a huge tanky enemy or an animal. Not to say that they're useless, it's just hard to see that effect in action when a target's torso is blown apart before it's even raised above its initial percentages. The target locator is a support trait, and it appears only for the revolver. This turns the gun into an amplifier for everybody else. Successful shots from it will deal minimal damage, but boost any additional rounds that land against the same target. Again, it's something especially useful for rapidly bringing down a high value or a dangerous target. If you're used to hunting Alpha Thrumbo, one of these might just be a godsend. The repair gun operates like the healing minigun, only for buildings. If you've got a particularly nasty turret holding down your front line that's drawing more attention than you would like, pinging it with the repair gun can keep the fixer safe whilst also avoiding the structure going boom. For a Nicolas Cage special, we've got the BB gun. This fires bees at the enemy.
Oh, no, not the bees! Not the bees! Ah! Open my eyes! Eyes! Ah!
Their tiny stinging wounds will apply toxic buildup. Again, it's one of those things that can work if you're trying to bring down a target with a status buildup rather than outright killing them. The main problem being you're going to need a handful of BB guns to apply toxic buildup fast enough to be meaningful. And then there's the risk of carcinomas as they're recovering. The Bubble Burster might look cute, but it packs a pretty disgusting payload. Each bubble will apply acid burn buildup, which is different to a straight acidic wound, as the target hit with this buildup continues to take acid burn after that initial salvo. Given how painful acid burns are with their relatively low damage, it's highly likely that a target will drop from pain with just 1 or 2 applications and a bit of time to let it tick. Entropy rounds are a royalty special and let you do some pretty devious things. These convert the wielder's neural heat into additional damage, whilst also removing that heat for every shot fired. If you can land entropy on something like a minigun, it allows you to dump a huge amount of neural heat with one burst for a lot of additional damage, and then follow it up with another cast to rebuild that heat, as well as cause more chaos on the battlefield. It gets a bit micromanagey and plays into the super soldier approach somewhat, but it can be devastating if used correctly. Something else for your beam repeaters now. We've got the acidic repeater, so I'm assuming you're pouring a foul curry directly into the weapon. This changes its laser attack into acid blast, the same kind that's used by the Bubble Burster. It's got low initial damage output, but sustained damage over time, with it potentially splattering a large amount of enemies in tight quarters or down kill corridors. That's all that we've got for ammo. It's time to cover the abilities that work on a cooldown basis. The self-skip field gives limited access to a form of the skip ability, letting the wielder teleport themselves to another location at a medium range once every 2 hours. It's especially useful on a weapon that has a pretty high cooldown and might leave you exposed or caught out of position after firing. The skip field does the same thing for another target. Same distance, same cooldown, you just can't target yourself, allowing you to move someone else to safety or to potentially throw an enemy out of cover and directly into a firing line. Invisibility field weapons come with a 12-hour cooldown for their ability, with the invisibility that they provide lasting around 2 hours once activated, and applying to all targets in the immediate vicinity. This kind of invisibility is the bonkers strong version. It isn't broken by performing an action or attacking, allowing you to make a completely obscured strike force that can get as close as they would like and use whatever weapons they want to bring all of their targets down. Detonating weapons don't hurt the user, but they will hurt anyone in the surrounding tiles. This is on a 12-hour cooldown, like invisibility, and allows the wielder to instantly trigger a grenade's worth of explosive damage around themselves. Really useful if your ranged fighter gets caught up in melee, giving them a hellish rebuke option. Mimic core weapons are very specific in their use. It allows the weapon to acquire the traits of another, whilst keeping the mimic core ability itself. Depending on the weapon this is on, not all traits are going to be applicable. You can't mimic arrows on an assault rifle, for example. The traits this steals aren't cumulative either, they replace what's already on the weapon, so you can't use this to cherry pick the best parts. You can, however, use it to transfer a really good set of traits on a low quality weapon onto something better. Whilst the description for this states that it will destroy the target, at the time of recording it didn't appear to. Sorry for bringing attention to that, as it essentially allowed you to duplicate a unique weapon when I was testing it out, and once it's fixed it's going to be a lot less powerful. Some abilities require materials to recharge, so that's what we're looking at now. A lot of these are going to be underbarrel launchers and will feel super familiar if you've already played with some of the underbarrels that Odyssey included. Starting with the Sludge Spewer. This holds 5 charges, takes 10 chem fuel per use. It behaves the same as the Lava Acid Spit ability from the Little Cocoon Buggos. It changes the floor to insect sludge. The biggest difference is its range. This can hit pretty far out when launching its goop. The Flare Launcher requires you to own Anomaly, giving you access to Disruptor Flares without needing to sacrifice your accessory slot. It only takes 5 bioferrite per charge to refuel, and it holds up to 3 flares at once. They're always handy to have. Also needing Anomaly is the Holy Hand Launcher. This is a dedicated anti-shambler technology. If the shambler tag is present on the target, be it a humanoid or an animal, it's going to rapidly make them crumble. Just like the flare launcher, this holds 3 charges and takes 5 bioferrite to recharge per shot. Just remember to count to 3 after pulling the trigger. No more, no less. 5 is right out. Sticking with the Anomaly DLC stuff, now we've got the Dead Life launcher. If you wanted to raise Shamblers rather than drop them, you can always launch one of these bad boys. It's quite costly, it requires an actual Dead Life shell to reload rather than just raw materials. This can help in distracting enemies by reanimating a bunch of their former friends to hold a line for you, whilst you reposition or perform a little bit of medicine on one of your own soldiers. That's not all for Anomaly either. The Flesh Melter launcher is a portable mini nuke. Whilst its naming might lead you to believe it's a dedicated anti-flesh mass weapon, it's actually using something similar to the Hellsphere cannon projectile, firing much faster than a Hellsphere but dealing reduced damage, which isn't to say it's weak, it still hits really hard, but it's an Anomaly special as it requires a shard to reload, making it really expensive to pull the trigger each time you use it, and whilst they're not expensive in silver, shards aren't exactly abundant in the world. If you're playing with biotech, you get the Tox grenade launcher, which actually made me tilt my head when I read it. That seriously wasn't included as a basic DLC interaction with Odyssey as standard? Either way, 15 steel per shot, 3 charges, all the Tox you would ever need to choke attackers. The Hellsphere launcher also needs the biotech DLC. This has a longer wind up than the Flesh Melter launcher because it fires the real deal, an actual nuke. It deals full damage and wipes out entire raids if placed correctly. The Hellsphere launcher holds just 1 charge and it demands 5 advanced components per shot, so better make it count. Rot Stink launchers are a nice vanilla-ish addition. They pack 6 charges and take only 2 steel per reload. These can easily saturate a kill corridor and lower enemy accuracy via reduced breathing and consciousness. Onto something that lets you play with an Odyssey mechanic a bit more freely. The Magma launcher lets you decide where to place lovely burning, slowing patches of pure pain. Phenomenal for locking down a corridor that raids have to pass through to reach your base or strike force. For just 50 steel per charge and holding up to 2 rounds, this is easily the strongest crowd control launcher available to you. The Architect launcher, on the other hand, is utter meme fuel. It holds 3 charges and it needs 1 component per shot, with it firing a raging chicken wherever you would like.
Chicken attack!
I'm not sure if this is a reference to the Egg Inc. idle game or the streamer Czar Plays. Either way, peak stupid, I'm fully here for it.
Chicken attack!
To go with all the other acid options that we had in the ammo conversions, you can also get a straight up acid bomb launcher. Potentially the best option as you can splatter the largest group of enemies with the painful dot and then clear them up with actual bullets. This is a little bit of a pricey option though. It holds 2 charges and it takes 2 components per shot. If you're a fan of the shatter rounds but didn't want to use them all the time, you have a similar effect in the shrapnel launcher. This releases a 360 degree splatter of shards that wound anything unfortunate enough to be near the point of impact. It's really cheap to fire too, 20 steel per shot with a maximum 3 charges. For something significantly less cheap to use, the Swarm launcher is a bit more boom-tastic. It launches 5 very slow moving micro missiles that explode similar to a hand grenade upon landing. The spread that occurs as they travel is actually extremely beneficial against a larger raid, as they're going to hit the entire group rather than overkilling the small cluster at the centre of it. You're going to pay 2 advanced components every time you press that button though, with it holding 2 shots. The Fire Foam launcher will give you insanely easy access to a very powerful utility, without taking an accessory slot or requiring a lot of pre-planning. Costing just 15 chem fuel per shot and holding 3 charges, this is bonkers helpful to have on just one weapon that's designated as your emergency launcher. stopping fires around the base from getting out of control, as well as saving a colonist or potential prisoner that's currently immolated. For something that does do a lot better with pre-planning, you have the Mine Deployer. Now, these seem like a disaster waiting to happen for most colonies, thanks to the often special Rimworld pathing logic, but if you can make it work for you, these are much cheaper to place around your base than building an actual IED, with each one only costing you 20 steel and holding up to 3 charges. As a less potent option for crowd control, when compared to a magma launcher anyway, you have caltrops. These take up just a single tile and last 2 days before they disappear. They're better suited in a very tight corridor. On the plus side, your own colonists can move over these slowly but without taking any damage, whereas enemies will be slowed and damaged, so compared to the magma that takes no prisoners and burns everything. Holding 5 charges, taking 20 steel each, you do best to stagger these down a maze corridor to break up the enemy snake, as weaker raiders will fall down from excessive blood loss and pain over time. If you want to ignore any kind of size logistics, you have the Barricade Deployer. This launches a steel barricade wherever you would like, but it costs 5 times more than straight up building a barricade would, at 25 steel per charge. But this does let you get it down immediately and anywhere you would like, regardless of that colonist's access to resources. With it holding 5 charges, it's quite easy to put down a quick holdout for your strike force. For something that's entirely utility based, you have pesticide canisters. This is something that can only go on the unique launcher too. This nukes blighted plants in the target area, saving your planter a little bit of work running around digging them out, and it potentially stops them spreading to another field in the time that would have taken. Each shot costs 50 chem fuel and it only holds 2 charges though, so make sure you land them spot on. Now comes the dehydrator grenades, utilising something a good percentage of players don't even remember is in the game. Hitting in a 5x5 area, minus corners, this provides the same effect as a moisture pump, which turns difficult terrain like mud into standard soil. Obviously its usefulness depends entirely on the biome that you're in, but it does work faster than using a moisture pump. The only downside is each shot from this launcher costs you 10 components. If you're playing with royalty, you might find the broad shield launcher, working just like the low shield pack utility with the bonus of it being deployed at range. It's exceptionally powerful as someone doesn't need to lead the charge and risk getting shot to slap it down. For just 1 advanced component per use, it's honestly easier to get a hold of than a normal low shield, as shield cores aren't exactly abundant in the game. The anti-tox launcher will help massively in a polluted biome, or if a waster raid decided to be a dick with a tox pack and drowned your base in a green mist. Each round fired from this will lower the toxic buildup of everyone caught in the area by 20%. Very helpful to get people under the buildup level that starts running the risk of things like carcinomas. Costing just 15 steel per shot and holding 3 charges, it's really easy to make good use of it in your hospital for a speedy fix. The grapple gun is dual purpose, with it depending on the target. If you fire it at an empty tile, it hops the wielder over, allowing for easy repositions or disengagements. If however you want to shoot it at an enemy, you scorpion them.
Get over here!
Again, it's useful for dragging prime targets out of cover or helping your squad focus fire something very quickly. At just 15 steel per charge with 5 charges in reserve, it's easier to use and more versatile than a jump pack in many cases, if a little bit stunted in its range. Melee traits time, because what you really needed on your guns was things that make them bash better. Admittedly, the attached chainsaw does a damn good job of ruining another person's day. Super useful if you're burning heretics, killing mutants and purging the unclean. The attached bayonet is a little bit more standard, with it understandably doing less damage than a chainsaw would in melee. Then you have toxic and acid sprayer variants. These work the same but cause either toxic buildup or the acid dot. You don't have a gizmo button to fire these like an underbarrel shotgun. They automatically activate on the melee swing. It's similar to being hit by an animal that causes those status effects. So there's no splash, it's just a very dangerous hit. Now for some passive traits. These are handy little bonuses that float around in the background just for equipping the weapon. Psychic Resilience plays like the dutiful gene from Vanilla Race's expanded Hussar. If the wielder is drafted, they cannot mentally break, meaning that all the stresses that come up during combat don't carry the risk of having to wander off to binge on food at a really inopportune time. Satiating is going to lower the hunger rate offset of the user, especially helpful if you equip it on a xenotype that has awful metabolic efficiency, as it'll stop them spending half the day in the dining room scarfing down food. Sharpshooter's Focus is helpful to offset poor shooting skill or a poor shooting gene, granting a +4 bonus to the skill with the weapon equipped. Remember that you do get the most impactful bonus from shooting skill between levels 0 and 10, then it starts to drop off in its gains all the way up to level 20. Adrenal Rush works extremely well on those super soldier style combatants. Someone intended to hoover up all your killing blows, as landing one is going to buff move speed, melee dodge chance and grant ranged evasion too. Not all of these effects can be good, of course. The Radiant Core causes 10% toxic buildup in the wielder whenever they land a killing blow, as the power source is balked and leaking fizzy air. Some effects are also weirder than others. The Orgasmatron Core can only appear on an assault rifle, making its shot supply the euphoric energy debuff, and the got some lovin' mood buff. Apparently it's difficult to lead the charge and focused on work whilst you're wearing damp underwear. A Sunburst core weapon will benefit greatly from being in a well lit environment, which means sunlight, not just torches or lamps around your base. If outside of sunlight, its damage multiplier is reversed, making it pretty damn specific when you want to use this. Vacuum sealed weapons are another specific use case, gaining a damage multiplier when fired in an environment that's totally airless. If used planet side or in a pressurized room, the multiplier flips and becomes a debuff instead. For biotech users, toxin tuned weapons are a godsend for your wasters. These get a damage multiplier for being used on polluted terrain, without the negative offset for using them normally like the sunburst or vacuum weapons here. So they're a win-win. Now we have a couple of traits in relation to the size of the weapon. They're basically the opposite side of the same coin. Oversized weapons will slow your aiming time, increase the weight of the weapon, but they make for a far harder hit in melee, so useful if you're stacking it to an attached chainsaw. Undersized weapons, however, will reduce aiming time, decrease the weight, and make it hit like a foam bat. But let's face it, you're not normally equipping a gun to primarily use it in melee. Time for some effects that hit raw stats on the weapons then. This is probably the kind of stuff you were very used to with vanilla Odyssey uniques. Revolvers can have an attached scope, which ups the range of the weapon a little bit. They can also use a double tap cylinder. This adds a 2-shot burst to the weapon at the cost of some of its accuracy, but we all know that more dakka is always the right option. Reinforced frames are useful if you're either really bad at storing your stuff or frequently have colonists downed with explosives. This slows the deterioration rate of the weapon and increases its maximum HP. An Insectoid Slayer weapon will deal additional acid damage against enemies marked as an insectoid, and if you've got Anomaly, you'll get an Entity Slayer version too. This deals its acid damage against anything flagged as an entity. And that, perhaps somewhat underwhelmingly, is that. There are so many new visuals for all of these weapons too, that hopefully you've been able to see during the demonstration footage. I would quite like to see a kit added that makes it easier to pick which appearance is used based on the currently installed weapon traits, as some seem to be fighting for priority and it might be the case that the part that you get the most use out of, like an underbarrel launcher, is being suppressed by something like vacuum sealed. But it's a super trivial gripe when the mod is adding so much fun stuff. On the topic of that though, being able to disable certain traits via the mod settings is something that will be a great quality of life for it, allowing users to remove some of the more bombastic additions to keep their options more grounded and allow for better variety without quite so much chaos at times. As it stands right now, if I wasn't using CE, this would 100% be in my core mod list, because I'm just a sucker for unique weapons. Whilst I'm not a fan of adding stuff in for the sake of having more stuff, it's why I use mods like C# Meat to compress things down. This is expanding on a system that thrives with a wide pool of options, so it makes sense to add many new parts into it. Variety is the purpose of unique weapons. If you'd like to see what I'm working on and get insights into any upcoming projects, it's all available to view on my Patreon page. All the posts there are free to read, but if you would like, you can support me in producing content like this for just £1 a month. It gets your name in the credits of these videos, and it does help me to stay alive. Wherever you are in the world, enjoy the rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening. And now more than ever, stay safe and take care.
You always got my back, and of course I got your back. Don't you worry about that. No, it's been a good day, good